He said he was working late. I found him at another woman's house. The clock on the wall read 11:23 p.m., and the glow of my phone screen was the only light in the dimly lit living room. My husband, Mark, had texted me 3 hours ago. "Hey, babe, work ran late again. Don't wait up. Love you." That was the third time this week. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about the way he had been acting lately gnawed at me. The sudden phone calls that made him step outside, the way he pulled away when I reached for his hand, the scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering on his jacket. I wasn't a jealous wife. But I wasn't a fool either. Tonight, my gut told me to check for myself. I grabbed my keys and slipped into my car, my hands tightening around the steering wheel. Mark's office was only a 15-minute drive downtown. If he was really there, I could swallow my doubts and move on. If he wasn't, then I had to face the truth. As I pulled into the empty parking lot of his firm, my stomach twisted. His car wasn't there. The office lights were off. I gripped my phone, my heart hammering in my chest. Where was he? I scrolled through his recent calls and noticed one number appearing more than it should have, one that wasn't saved in his contacts. My fingers trembled as I copied it and ran a quick search. The name that popped up made my blood run cold. Samantha Carter. I knew that name. She worked at Mark's firm, a junior associate he had casually mentioned once or twice. She's just a kid. He had laughed when I teased him about her. But I wasn't laughing now. A sinking feeling took over me as I searched her address. It wasn't far. I took a deep breath, put my car in drive, and followed the path of my husband's betrayal. The drive to Samantha Carter's house was a blur. My fingers clenched the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, and my heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. I didn't know what I expected to find. Mark could have a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. The address led me to a quiet suburban neighborhood lined with perfect little houses, each one glowing softly under the streetlights. My stomach twisted as I spotted it, the small white house with a blue door. And parked right in front of it? I inhaled sharply. He wasn't working late. He was here. I pulled up a little further down the street, parking where I wouldn't be noticed. My hands were shaking as I turned off the engine and stepped out, my heels clicking softly against the pavement. The windows of the house were lit, the curtains slightly parted. From where I stood, I could see inside. And what I saw made my breath catch in my throat. Mark was there, sitting comfortably on the couch, laughing. Across from him, Samantha sat cross-legged, a wine glass in her hand. She leaned toward him, smiling, her blonde hair falling over one shoulder. I felt my heart splinter. This wasn't a work meeting. There were no stacks of papers, no laptops, no stressed expressions. This was intimate, casual, too comfortable. A lump formed in my throat, anger bubbling beneath my skin. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Should I storm in? Call him? Walk away? But before I could decide, something happened that made my blood run cold. Samantha reached out and touched his hand. And Mark didn't pull away. Instead, he looked at her the way he used to look at me. Something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, fists clenched at my sides, ready to make my presence known. I didn't remember walking up the driveway. I barely felt the cool night air on my skin as I stepped toward the blue door. My mind was on autopilot, my heart slamming against my ribs. I could hear muffled voices and soft laughter inside. Mark's laughter. The same laugh that used to fill our home. The same warmth he used to give me. Not anymore. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Then I stopped. I wasn't going to sneak in like some pathetic wife, begging for answers. He owed me the truth. I raised my fist and pounded on the door. The laughter stopped. Footsteps approached. My breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. The door creaked open. His face drained of color the moment he saw me. His eyes went wide, his lips parting, but no words came out. Behind him, Samantha stood frozen, her wine glass still in hand. Her eyes darted between us, realization sinking in. "Hey, babe," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I thought you were working late." Mark swallowed hard, stepping onto the porch and pulling the door halfway shut behind him. "Jenna, what are you doing here?" I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. "Oh, I don't know, Mark. Maybe because my husband has been lying to me for weeks. Maybe because I find him at another woman's house when he's supposed to be at work." Samantha cleared her throat, her voice hesitant. I I think maybe I should go." "Oh, don't run now," I snapped, my glare locking onto her. "You were comfortable enough touching my husband's hand. Don't get shy now." Mark groaned, rubbing his temples. "Jenna, it's not what you think." I scoffed. "Really? Because from out here, it sure looks like you're having a nice little date night while I sit at home like an idiot." Samantha took a step back, guilt flickering across her face. "I didn't know you were married," she muttered. I turned back to Mark, my stomach twisting. "You didn't even tell her?" My voice cracked. "Jesus, Mark. How long?" He hesitated. That was enough of an answer. My chest ached, the betrayal hitting me all at once. I had trusted him. I had fought the nagging doubts, convinced myself I was being paranoid. But I was right. Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. Instead, I took a deep breath and smiled. "You know what?" I said, stepping back. "You two enjoy your night. Mark, don't bother coming home." His eyes widened. "Jenna..." I turned on my heel and walked away. He didn't follow me. As I got into my car, my hands still shaking, one thought rang in my mind. This isn't over. I drove away with the bitter taste of betrayal burning in my mouth. The night was colder than usual, as if the world itself was mourning what I had just witnessed. My hands clutched the steering wheel tightly, and my mind raced with questions. What now? And who do I turn to? I couldn't bring myself to return home. Instead, I found refuge in the silence of a 24-hour cafe on the outskirts of town. I settled into a corner booth, ordered a coffee, and let the hum of quiet conversations and clinking cups drown out the chaos in my head. As I stared into the depths of my coffee cup, memories of happier times with Mark played in my mind like a cruel montage. I recalled the first time I fell for his charm, his endless promises of forever, and how I believed we'd overcome every storm together. But now, it felt as if everything was crumbling under the weight of lies. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I opened it. "I'm sorry for what you saw tonight. I never meant to hurt you. Please call me, Mark." My heart hammered. Was this an olive branch or another manipulation? I felt torn between the urge to demand more answers and the need to reclaim my self-worth. I typed a response, my fingers hesitating over each word. "I need the truth, Mark. I deserve that much." Before sending, I paused, wondering if facing him now would reopen a wound that was just beginning to scar. But the burning need for closure prevailed, and I hit send. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one loaded with suspense. Finally, my phone buzzed with his reply. "Meet me at the old pier in an hour. Alone. I'll explain everything." I stared at the message, my mind a whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and a desperate hope for clarity. The old pier, a place we once visited together during brighter days, now beckoned me as the stage for the final act of our unraveling. With a deep, shaky breath, I decided to go. It was time to confront the shattered remnants of my trust, to hear Mark's truth, whatever it might be. As I stepped out of the cafe into the crisp night air, a storm brewed both outside and within me. The pier loomed in the distance, dark against the starlit sky, waiting for answers. In that moment, I realized that the path ahead would not be easy. Whether it led to forgiveness, closure, or a complete severance, I knew one thing for certain. I was done living in lies. And so, I drove towards the pier, my resolve hardening with every mile, determined to face the truth head-on, even if it shattered what remained of my heart. The drive to the old pier felt like an eternity. The roads were nearly empty, the streetlights flickering above me like they knew a storm was coming. Maybe it was. I parked a short distance away, my heart pounding against my ribs. The pier stretched out into the dark water, moonlight reflecting off the rippling waves. And there he was. Mark stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, his shoulders tense. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, his face unreadable. I stopped a few feet away, crossing my arms over my chest. "You have one chance, Mark. One chance to tell me the truth." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Jenna, I never wanted you to find out like this." I let out a sharp laugh. "Oh? How did you want me to find out? A heartfelt confession? Or maybe after you'd had your fun with her?" He shook his head. "It's not like that." "Then explain it to me," I snapped, anger surging through me. "Because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell looked like you were on a date with another woman while your wife sat at home thinking you were working." Mark exhaled heavily. "I wasn't cheating." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "I swear," he said, stepping closer, his eyes pleading. "I wasn't having an affair. He hesitated. "I lied, yes, but not for the reason you think." I stared at him, my fists clenched. "Then why? Why were you there, Mark?" He hesitated again, then finally muttered, "Because I'm helping her." I frowned. "Helping her?" Mark nodded, glancing toward the water. "Samantha, she's in trouble, Jenna. Serious trouble." My mind raced. What the hell was he talking about? "She came to me a few months ago," he continued. "She was scared. Her ex-boyfriend had been stalking her, threatening her. She didn't know where else to turn." I narrowed my eyes, my anger still simmering just beneath the surface. "And you were the only one who could help her? You couldn't suggest she go to the police?" "She did," he said. "But nothing changed. The guy's smart, he covers his tracks. I told her I'd look into it, that I'd keep her safe. That's all it was." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to the idea that Mark wasn't a liar, wasn't a cheater. But too much had already been broken. "If that's true," I said slowly, "then why didn't you just tell me?" Mark looked down, shame flickering across his face. "Because I knew how it would look. I knew you'd think the worst." My chest tightened. He wasn't wrong, but still. "I don't know if I believe you," I admitted. "I saw the way you looked at her, Mark. I saw the way she touched your hand. That's not just helping someone." He swallowed hard. "I care about her, Jenna, but not in the way you think. I care because she's terrified, because she's alone." He sighed. "And maybe I was avoiding you, because I knew our marriage hasn't been the same for a while." That last sentence hit me like a punch to the gut. I took a step back, my breath shaky. "So what now?" Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Hope? Guilt? "I don't know," he admitted. "But I don't want to lose you, Jenna." I didn't answer, because for the first time I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay. The waves crashed against the pier, the wind biting at my skin. The truth was out. But was it enough? And more importantly, the night air felt heavier now, pressing against me as I stood there, staring at the man I had once trusted with everything. Mark's confession had shaken me, but not in the way he expected. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was he truly helping Samantha? Or was this just another carefully constructed lie? Did I even care at this point? Because whether or not he physically cheated, he had still betrayed me. "You don't want to lose me," I finally repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark nodded quickly, his eyes desperate. "No, Jenna, I love you. I know I messed up, but I swear I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "But you did, Mark. You lied to me. You made me feel crazy for doubting you. And now you expect me to just..." What? Forgive you? He took a step forward. I don't expect anything. I want to fix this. I swallowed hard, looking away. Could this even be fixed? My mind raced through the memories of the past few months. The emotional distance, the late nights, the unexplained absences. I had ignored the signs for so long, hoping things would get better. But they hadn't. And now, here we were. I inhaled sharply and met his gaze. You want to fix this? I asked, my voice steady. Then tell me the whole truth, Mark. No more half-truths, no more I was trying to protect you. Tell me everything. Mark hesitated, then exhaled. Fine, but not here. I frowned. Why not? He glanced around the empty pier, then lowered his voice. Because I think someone's watching us. A chill ran down my spine. What? Mark's eyes flicked toward a darkened car parked a short distance away. It was barely visible under the dim streetlights, but I could make out the faint outline of a figure inside. Samantha's stalker? I felt my pulse spike. Was this another lie? Or was Mark truly in deeper than I had realized? I turned back to him. Mark, what the hell is going on? His jaw clenched. Let's get out of here. I'll tell you everything. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to walk away from him for good. But if there was even the slightest chance that he was telling the truth, if there really was danger involved, then I needed to know. Taking a deep breath, I nodded. Fine, but after this, I decide whether we're done. Mark's expression darkened, but he nodded. Fair enough. As we walked back to my car, I could feel the eyes on us, watching, waiting. And for the first time that night, I realized this wasn't just about Mark's betrayal anymore. Something much bigger was at play. I could feel it. The weight of unseen eyes on my back. The cold wind bit at my skin, but the real chill came from the shadowy figure in the parked car. Mark had noticed it too. His posture was tense, his movements sharper, more cautious. Get in the car, he muttered under his breath. I hesitated. Mark, what the hell is going on? If someone's watching us, we need to… Jenna? He cut me off, his tone urgent. Please, just get in the car. A surge of unease coiled in my stomach, but I did as he said. The moment my door shut, Mark slid into the passenger seat, his eyes still on the parked car. Drive. Now. I turned the key, the engine roaring to life. As I pulled away from the pier, I checked the rearview mirror. The dark car had turned on its headlights, and it was following us. My pulse skyrocketed. Oh my God. Mark, just stay calm, he said, though his voice wasn't steady either. Stay calm? I hissed. There is a damn car following us. Who the hell is that? Mark exhaled sharply. I think it's him. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. You mean Samantha's ex? Mark gave a stiff nod. Yeah, and if he knows that I've been helping her, that means he knows you now too. I felt the blood drain from my face. The car behind us suddenly sped up. The headlights grew brighter in the mirror, closing the distance between us. He's getting closer, I breathed, my grip on the wheel tightening. Turn here. Mark pointed to a narrow side street, and I swerved sharply, tires screeching. The car behind us hesitated for a second at the intersection, then turned after us. Panic rose in my throat. Mark, I am not built for a high-speed chase. What do we do? Lose him. Oh, great plan. Should I also grow wings and fly out of here? Jenna! The car behind us suddenly gunned it, closing in fast. Too fast. Shit! I shouted, my foot slamming on the gas. The streets blurred past as I took another sharp turn. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might explode. Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. It's Samantha, he muttered. I gritted my teeth. Oh, now she calls? Mark ignored my sarcasm and answered. Sam, listen, I think he… Then, just as suddenly as it had started, The headlights disappeared. The car was gone. I kept driving, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Where did he go? Mark twisted in his seat, scanning the dark streets behind us. I don't know. He hung up without another word to Samantha. I pulled into a gas station and parked, my hands still gripping the wheel like my life depended on it. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. My brain was still trying to process what just happened. Finally, I turned to Mark. Start talking. Now. Mark ran a hand through his hair, his expression grim. I think he's not just after Samantha anymore. My stomach dropped. Jenna, he said slowly, I think he's after you. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean he's after me? Mark's face was tense, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists. If he saw us together, if he thinks you're involved, he won't stop. I shook my head, my heart slamming against my ribs. No, this isn't my problem. This is your mess, Mark. Samantha's mess. I should have never... A loud thud outside made both of us jump. We whipped our heads toward the passenger side window. A man, tall, broad, hood pulled low over his face, was standing just a few feet away, watching us. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Oh my God. Mark moved fast. Lock the doors. I hit the button just as the man took a step closer. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. Start the car, Mark said, his voice low but urgent. I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The engine roared to life just as the man lunged forward and slammed his fist against my window. I screamed. The glass didn't break, but the force of the hit sent a crack spiderwebbing across the surface. Mark grabbed my arm. Go, now! I didn't need to be told twice. I threw the car into reverse, tires screeching as I backed out of the gas station at full speed. The man didn't chase us. He just stood there, watching, smiling. A sick, knowing smile. I tore out onto the main road, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Who the hell is this guy? Mark shook his head. I don't know his real name. Samantha only called him Ryan. I gripped the wheel tighter. So what does he want? To scare us? Hurt us? Mark hesitated. I think he wants revenge. I let out a bitter laugh. Revenge for what? Mark's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. I turned to him, my pulse still racing. Mark, if there's more to this, if you're hiding something, I need to know right now. He exhaled sharply. Jenna, Samantha didn't just come to me for help. She asked me to get rid of him. My stomach twisted. Get rid of him? As in... No, not like that, Mark said quickly. She just wanted me to scare him off. Make him think she had someone watching her back. I narrowed my eyes. And what did you do? Mark looked straight ahead, his voice quieter. I went to his house. I told him if he didn't leave her alone, he'd regret it. I swallowed hard. And? Mark hesitated. He laughed in my face. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Mark turned to me, his eyes dark. Jenna, he's not just some jealous ex. He's dangerous. And now that he knows about you... I didn't need him to finish. I already knew. I was in real trouble. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Dangerous. My pulse thundered in my ears as I glanced back at the rearview mirror. The dark road stretched out behind us, but the feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. Mark's hand gripped the edge of his seat, his knuckles white. We need to get off the main roads, find somewhere secluded, somewhere he can't follow us. I nodded, panic twisting my insides. You're telling me all this now? After we've been driving around in circles? Mark, do you realize what you've dragged me into? His eyes were filled with regret, but also a desperation that made my stomach turn. I didn't know how deep this was, Jenna. I didn't know how far he'd go. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I snapped. My voice cracked, a mixture of rage and fear pooling in my chest. Why didn't you tell me about him? About this dangerous mess you were in with Samantha? I thought I could handle it. I thought I could protect you, he said quietly. I should have been honest, but I didn't want to drag you into it. This was supposed to be her problem, not yours. Well, guess what, Mark? I whipped my gaze to the road ahead, my breath coming in short bursts. It's our problem now, and I don't know how we're going to get out of it. Mark didn't say anything for a long time. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but there was something else. Something darker. Fear. Suddenly, his eyes darted toward the rearview mirror. Shit, he's still behind us. I jerked the wheel hard to the right, veering off the main road onto a smaller, less traveled path. The tires screeched and the headlights of the car behind us flashed, closing the gap. The sound of my heartbeat drowned everything out. My mind screamed that we had to get away. The roads were narrowing. The trees on both sides of the path looked like dark, oppressive shadows as I pushed the car faster, nearly losing control at every turn. Mark's voice was low, tense. If we lose him, we might have a chance, but we have to be careful. He won't stop, Jenna. He'll come after us, after you, until we're both gone. I shook my head. Number, I'm not going down like this. I'm not letting some psycho ruin my life. The car behind us wasn't letting up. It was getting closer, the headlights blinding me as I swerved to avoid the sharp turns ahead. I could feel my hands growing clammy, my heart racing, the adrenaline spiking as we pushed through the desolate, darkened road. Then, just when I thought we might finally shake him off, I saw it. A tree in the middle of the road. It wasn't an accident. The tree was purposely placed there, blocking the path. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The car hit the tree, the force of the impact sending us crashing to a halt. I gasped as the airbag inflated, slamming into my face. The world spun around me. My ears rang. Jenna! Mark's voice came through the haze. He was unbuckling his seatbelt, trying to push past the smoke filling the cabin. Are you okay? I blinked, dazed. I think so. My voice was shaky. I looked at the steering wheel. Blood was trickling from a cut on my forehead, but nothing seemed broken. We need to get out of here, now. Mark's voice was urgent, and I knew it wasn't just the crash he was worried about. The headlights behind us were still on, but the car wasn't moving. The stalker was waiting. Mark didn't waste another second. He shoved open the door, pulling me out of the wreck. We're running. Can you walk? I nodded, my legs wobbly beneath me. But the fear had me moving faster than I should have. We darted off the road, running into the dense trees, our breaths heavy and quick. My lungs burned as I heard the crunch of boots on the gravel behind us. Keep moving, Mark hissed, pulling me farther into the woods. But it was too late. A flash of movement. The figure in the darkness emerged, tall and menacing. Mark. The man's voice was low, deadly. You really thought you could get away from me? My heart pounded as Mark turned to face him. Ryan, he said through gritted teeth. I won't let you hurt her. Ryan's laugh was dark, filled with malice. You've already dragged her into this, Mark. You can't protect her now. I looked between Mark and Ryan, realizing with horror that this wasn't just a game anymore. We were being hunted. The tension in the air was suffocating. The only sound was the rustling of leaves as the wind howled through the trees, but my heart was beating so loudly I could barely hear anything else. Mark and Ryan stood off in the dim light, the distance between them electric, crackling with animosity. I could barely make out the features of Ryan's face, but the menace in his posture was undeniable. You're out of your league, Mark, Ryan growled, his voice low and venomous. I told you, didn't I? I warned you to stay out of this. Mark stepped forward, positioning himself between me and Ryan, as if he could somehow shield me from what was about to happen. You don't scare me, Ryan. His voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying strain. But you're not going to hurt her. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. Ryan laughed, a harsh sound that sent shivers through my body. You really think you can protect her now? You've already failed her once. His eyes flickered to me, a cold, predatory gleam in them. I can take what I want. Mark moved faster than I could react, pulling me behind him and creating some distance between us. Get out of here, Jenna, now. I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came out. My legs were frozen, and my mind was spinning. I was too terrified to move. Ryan took a step toward us. You're not going anywhere, Jenna. You think I'm just going to let you walk away after everything you've done? His voice dripped with venom. Mark clenched his fists, his whole body tense, ready to fight. Leave her out of this, Ryan. This is between you and me. Ryan smirked. You still don't get it, do you? It was always about her. She's the reason I've been coming for you, Mark. I've been watching you both for months. My stomach twisted with nausea. He's been stalking us. Me? For months? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, Ryan lunged. Before I could process what was happening, Mark was already reacting, tackling Ryan to the ground. The two men grappled, fists flying, each trying to gain the upper hand. The sound of bones hitting flesh, grunts of exertion, and the crackle of leaves beneath them filled the air. I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't. I backed up slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. But as I took a step, my foot hit something hard, a fallen branch, and I froze. The snap of the wood echoed in the silence, and I knew it was enough to alert Ryan. I turned. I ran. The moment I moved, Ryan was on his feet, shouting, "No, she's mine!" His words were like a rope pulling at me, dragging me deeper into the nightmare I was already living. I ran harder, branches slapping at my face, the thudding of footsteps behind me matching my frantic pace. I had no plan, no direction, just the need to escape. I glanced behind me. Ryan was gaining on me. Too fast. Too close. I spotted a small, dark figure ahead. The old, crumbling cabin. It seemed like a long shot, but I had to try. I didn't think twice. I sprinted toward the cabin, my legs screaming in protest. My breath burned in my chest. When I reached the door, I shoved it open. The air inside was thick with dust, the wooden floor creaking under my weight. But it was a shelter, a place to hide, even if it was only for a moment. I slammed the door behind me, my heart racing as I pressed my back against it. The small, rotting cabin offered no real safety, but it was my only chance. I waited, breathless, straining to hear anything. Seconds passed, then minutes. I slowly peered out through a crack in the door, and that's when I saw him. Ryan's face appeared from the shadows, his cold eyes locking onto mine. He was standing just outside the cabin, waiting. I held my breath. He smirked, that same cruel, calculating smile. You can't hide, Jenna. I stepped back, panic flooding my chest. How did he find me? And just then, I heard a noise. A shout. Jenna! It was Mark. I didn't hesitate. I opened the door only enough to peek outside. Mark's figure emerged from the trees, covered in dirt and blood, but still standing, still fighting. Ryan's eyes flicked between us, calculating. This is where it ends. But Mark wasn't done. He charged forward, adrenaline kicking in as he slammed his body into Ryan's. The two of them collided with a sickening thud, and I watched helplessly as Mark fought for his life. And mine. I couldn't just watch. I couldn't stand by. I grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the ground, gritting my teeth. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. I swung it with everything I had. The pipe collided with Ryan's back with a sickening crack. Ryan staggered, barely staying on his feet. He spun, his eyes wild with rage. But Mark didn't hesitate. He tackled him again, this time knocking him to the ground. Ryan tried to fight back, but Mark's determination was too much. The last thing I saw was Ryan's eyes going blank, his body going still. Mark stood over him, panting, covered in bruises and cuts, but his eyes were locked on me. Jenna. I ran to him, my knees weak. Is he? Mark knelt down, checking Ryan's pulse. He let out a long breath. He's out. For good. I collapsed into Mark's arms, shaking uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. You don't have to do anything anymore, he whispered, pulling me close. You're safe now. We're safe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was always someone waiting, watching, just out of sight. The cabin was silent, the world around us still. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped, like the chaos had been erased from existence. Mark held me tightly, his arms strong around me, but even then I could feel the tremor in his hands. His breathing was ragged, his eyes scanning the dark woods like they still expected danger to come crashing through the trees. I tried to steady myself, but the weight of everything was too much. Is it over? Is he really gone? Mark's voice was low, almost hesitant as he pulled back to look at me. I think so, but we can't be sure. He had plans. Things I didn't understand. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. What do you mean? He looked away, his jaw clenching. Ryan wasn't working alone, Jenna. He had people, The sudden sound of a gunshot shattered the air. Mark's head snapped to the side, his body tensing. Get down. Before I could react, the glass of the cabin's door shattered, and I felt the force of something hard slamming into the wood next to me. My heart stopped. It wasn't over. It had just begun. Mark pulled me to the ground, dragging me behind the remains of the door as the sound of footsteps rushed toward us. His voice was harsh, urgent. Stay low, don't move. I could barely breathe. My chest was tight, my eyes scanning the shattered glass, the shadows creeping in on us. The footsteps grew louder. Another shot rang out, this one closer. Mark's arm tightened around me as we huddled, helpless in the corner of the cabin. Mark's face was grim, eyes wild. It's not just Ryan. It's them too. They're here. I felt the cold rush of panic flood my veins. Who, Mark? Who are they? I don't know, but they're always watching. They'll never stop coming for us. The door creaked, a shadow falling across the room. I was paralyzed. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. We were trapped, exposed, and I knew we weren't getting out of this. Suddenly, a voice cut through the air like a blade. Mark, you've made a grave mistake. I froze. That voice, it wasn't Ryan's. It was cold, calculating, full of power. From the shadows stepped a man, older than Ryan, dressed in a sharp black suit. His eyes gleamed with a cruel, predatory look, and he smiled like a predator, eyeing its prey. You've crossed a line that will cost you more than just your life, the man said. His gaze shifted to me, and my heart sank. And as for you, you'll regret ever getting involved with him. Mark's voice was barely a whisper. You were the one pulling the strings all along, weren't you? You've been using Ryan to get to me. To her? The man's smile widened. You finally figured it out. Too late, though. I could feel it. The suffocating weight of inevitability. The fear. The dread. And I realized something. We weren't meant to survive this. Suddenly, the man snapped his fingers, and from the darkness, more figures emerged, all cloaked in black, armed. Mark stood up quickly, blocking me with his body. His eyes were fierce, but there was a dark resignation in them. If you want me, you're going to have to kill me. The man didn't even flinch. You don't understand, Mark. You already belong to us. You always have. I felt the chill of the words settle in my bones. This was bigger than us. The people in front of us weren't just criminals. They were a part of something far more dangerous, far more sinister. And we were their final mistake. Before I could process it, the world exploded in noise. The crack of gunfire, the sound of chaos. Mark lunged toward me, pushing me to the floor just as the shots rang out. I closed my eyes. And then everything went silent. When I opened them again, the man in the suit was gone, and the figures that had surrounded us were vanishing into the woods. The only sound now was the wind rustling through the trees. Mark was beside me, his breath shallow, eyes wide. Blood dripped from a wound in his shoulder. He looked at me, his lips trembling. Jenna, it's not over. They'll always be there. I held his hand, my voice barely a whisper. We didn't ask for any of this. We didn't deserve it. He gave a faint smile, though it was full of pain. But we're here. We survived. For now. But as the last of the footsteps faded, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The danger wasn't over. It had only just begun.